Hi, this is Beth Colley here from the freedomplan.info, and today the topic of my video is tips for exploring childcare options for working moms. So I wanted to discuss this topic because there's been some horror stories in the news lately. And I won't go into the details because it's kind of depressing, but needless to say, the story didn't end too well. But it seems that there were signs that this, in the most recent case anyway, that there were some signs that this wasn't a good daycare right from the outset. So, what I wanted to try and do is provide some advice to working moms that are maybe on mat leave right now and going back to work. Some tips on how to find good daycare, when to start looking, and what to watch out for, as well as the different options that are available. So first off, the time to start looking for childcare is when you're pregnant or while you're on mat leave. Don't leave it for the last minute, and I'm serious about this because in most places, if you haven't already got a parent who's willing to look after your child, you will find that there's long waiting lists for a lot of childcare options that are out there, sometimes up to a year. So what I'd recommend is that you seek out different options and get your name on at least one list, maybe more, and that way you'll be more likely to secure care for your child that you're happy with. Okay. Um, so while my child was growing up, he spent time actually in both um, home daycare settings as well as uh, daycare center settings. And so both options are available to you if you haven't got a parent or a sister or brother, let's say, who's going to look after your child. But of the two, the home daycare setting or the center, the childcare center setting, I would definitely say that I prefer the home childcare setting. And I had my son in probably three different home care settings and three different um, uh, daycare center settings. And definitely the home care setting I found was a lot nicer, was a lot more relaxed, a lot more one-on-one time with the care provider. Um, and the good news is that I was very lucky all three times that I had him in a home daycare setting. Now the first time I did go through an agency, and that would be what I would highly recommend, is going through an agency, because they typically will do criminal background checks. They'll um, also do unannounced spot checks on the care provider, and they'll also run regular seminars to provide additional training on CPR and proper food storage to make sure that your child doesn't end up in a situation where they get food poisoning. They'll also inspect all the equipment, so the cribs and etc. will be inspected to make sure that they're functioning properly and not going to, injure a child, injure a baby, or anything like that. And and they have to adhere to government standards, government regulations. So they ensure that there's no more than 5 kids being cared for in the home. So I was very fortunate. I was referred to an awesome lady that to this day, she still sends us Christmas cards and sends birthday cards to my son, and she's absolutely fantastic. Um, yeah, I would have sent all my kids to her if I'd had more than one, but I only actually had one. Um, and she actually looked after my son more than 10 years ago, and she's still in touch with us twice a year, which is fantastic. Uh, so what you want to do when you are investigating daycare options or home child care options is spend some time interviewing the provider. You'll want to first and foremost get a tour of their home to find out, where the nap area is, where the children eat, and so on. Now, you may not necessarily get an opportunity to do that when the kids are there, because it is a little bit disruptive. But at least, if you see the nap room and there's like 20 cribs in the room, there's a problem. They're in my area anyway, not allowed to have more than 5 kids at a time outside of their own children to look after. So you'll also want to ask some interview questions. Ask them how they diffuse difficult situations. Because at some point or another, there's going to be a dispute over a toy. It's inevitable. Ask them what their thoughts are on discipline, and how they handle behavioral problems. My son was a biter when he was about 3 years old at the time that this care provider was looking after him, and I let her know that that was an issue that we were dealing with, and she got him out of that within 3 days, basically. And it was all just based on misdirecting or redirecting his attention towards something else. And biting is relatively common, but thank goodness no kids were hurt in the process. But she was able to get him out of that habit. So those are some questions you want to ask. You want to ask what types of foods do they eat. Make sure that they know whether or not, if your child has any allergies, make sure they're aware of that. What types of activities do you do? All those questions. Spend some time with them and make sure you select somebody that you're comfortable with. Now, some things that may set off alarm bells, or should set off alarm bells, are things like an unwillingness to give you a tour of their home. That's definitely a big red flag right there. If the care provider asks you to pay for a whole year of care up front, that's not normal. That is a big red flag right there. And or if they're considerably cheaper than anyone else in your area. So just be aware of those things and walk away, because those typically are situations where things go very wrong. And if you're more comfortable with getting a child care center to look after your child, then that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I certainly had my child in about 3 different centers when he was growing up. And but I just felt it was a little more impersonal. The good news is about those centers, though, is that they are typically they're licensed, they're monitored by either a provincial or a state government agency, so that there are laws that they have to adhere to in terms of, how many caregivers. Let's say they've got 5 caregivers in the center. Each caregiver can have a maximum of 5 kids that they're looking after at a time, for example. So, and because there's a number of different adults there, then you may feel more comfortable with that situation. Now, if all this makes you sad, maybe you're on maternity leave right now, and you're dreading the thought of having to go back to work and leaving your child with somebody else. I know how you feel. You will get through it. But what you need to do is check out my blog and follow what I've been doing to earn income from the comfort of my home online. This certainly may be something that would be appealing to you if you're in a situation where you're having to go back to work and leave your child with somebody else. If your dream is to stay home with your child, this is something that you can do in just a couple of hours a day. So go ahead and visit thefreedomplan.info for more information, and let me know if you have any questions. Thanks very much. This is Beth Colley.